You're always told to think positive, right? But how do you actually do it? And how do you do it in a way that feels aligned, like actually legit? That's what I'm going to talk about with Dr. Paul today. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. The show is for you. You've worked so hard for that money, and you're now ready for that money to start working harder for you today. You want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, because you have enough passive income coming in to be able to cover your expenses and live the life of your dreams. But it's not just about getting rich, it's about living a rich life, because as you're blessed financially, you now have greater resources and ability to bless the lives of those around you. And that is a ripple effect I'm here to do for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. You've been sharing. We're now approaching nearly 950 episodes, all because you guys have been so faithful, so amazing in what we do here. So thank you so much. Hey, if you want to keep that ripple effect going, and if this has been a blessing in your life as well, please subscribe, like, share it with somebody else. Even if you're in some sort of forum or a little chat and somebody says, hey, where do I go to find and become, like, create passive income, investing, or even just, how to become more financially prosperous, mention our podcast, mention it and share. So please, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being able to share that love so that our ripple effect can bless more lives. Okay, today, so guys, I'm bringing back a guest that I know you probably haven't seen for a while because, well, when we do like 100 episodes a year, it gets buried because especially when the iTunes, you can only see 300 episodes back. You only see 3 years back. Well, someone I've had on actually a few times. This, I believe, is the third or fourth time. So it's either third or fourth time's a charm with Dr. Paul Jenkins, right? Now, Dr. Paul, just so you know, not only have I worked with him personally, but Dr. Paul is one of those guys that is not just someone who's amazing psychologist, marriage and family therapist, but he's someone who actually helps you through the thinking. How do we actually become positive, truly positive, not just naive, as some people might say that we might be, right? Or like we're delusional. But how do you actually become positive in a way that creates massive impact in your life? That's what we're going to talk with him today. So, Dr. Paul, welcome back.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I'd forgotten that there were multiple earlier appearances, and you've been on my show as well, Live on Purpose Radio.
That's
And
right.
that
Yeah.
goes back a ways, at least a decade, right?
That's right. Well, I remember the
It's,
first time I heard you was actually on AM Talk Radio. Because I know some
yes.
people, if they've heard my story or they watched my MASH classes, I talked about how there was a guy that I trained to be a financial advisor, and he told me to go listen, not just to go read this book, Who Took My Money by Robert Kiyosaki, but then he's like, go listen to this AM Talk Radio show with these real estate investors talking about stuff. And you actually were one of those guest appearances that they would bring on, I believe it was every Thursday, if I recall.
You are remembering correctly, Chris. I anchored the Thursday show in a 5-day-a-week radio show called Producer Revolution Radio.
Yeah.
And that's going back a ways too. In fact, when that show ended, I found out as I was driving to work listening to the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that the programming had changed and I would no longer be on the mic on live talk radio. And that's when a friend of mine suggested, hey, why not launch a podcast?
That's right.
And I'm like, a what? I had never even heard of one. This is in 2006.
Yeah.
And I launched my show in 2007 before podcasting was even a thing.
I
And
know.
then Chris, you were one of the early guests in those early years
Yeah.
as we got started on that. So yeah, we go back a ways.
Yeah. When somebody tells me like you're an OG in podcasting, right? Where, I believe my first episode I launched was with it might have been actually with the same guys that helped produce your show, produced mine. It was like late 2008. It was, I think, December 2008. And people are like,
Yeah,
I can't believe it. Hardly anybody heard a podcast back then. But you beat me by like
right.
almost 2 years prior to that. You were doing podcasts when almost no one was doing podcasts at that time.
Well, it's true, but you're a couple of hundred episodes ahead of me. So there you go. I launch an episode a week, and that's a little slower pace than 100 a year.
That's for sure. Well, tell us more about you. Tell us more about who Dr. Paul is and really what you stand for.
Well, thank you, Chris. And as a psychologist, I've been through a career evolution. And this is a common story, I know, because we start out thinking, oh, we're going to go do this. And then, surprise, life throws different things at you and you discover things along the way. And usually it has to do with drama or trauma.
Mm.
And I experienced that. In fact, chapter 1 in my book, Pathological Positivity, is titled Lightning Strikes. And this is when I had a busy outpatient psychotherapy practice. I was booked out for weeks. You couldn't even get an appointment with me. I had a waiting list. And I had negative cash flow for 2 quarters in a row.
Mhm.
And Chris, I don't know what kind of math you do, but according to the math I do now, that's not sustainable.
Yeah, that's
And
called a personal recession right there, isn't it?
well, yeah, there's a lot of things that we could call it, but long story short, it ended up in a bankruptcy.
Mhm.
And this is something I had never planned. I didn't set out for this. It wasn't on my bucket list. But here I was in
Mhm.
this position. And to make a longer story short, it taught me at a very heart level what I had been teaching all of my clients intellectually for about a decade and a half at that point.
Mhm.
And I got to learn firsthand, personally, the power of principle and the one that you introduced, positivity. I mean, you've heard it forever. Just think positive,
Mhm.
which is such a trite, fluffy, annoying phrase,
Yeah.
depending on who's saying it. But when you understand the psychology behind it changes the game. It literally becomes the operating instructions for the equipment of your own mind. And I knew this intellectually, Chris, but I had to discover it personally by going through my own personal lightning strikes experience and discovering that our circumstances are neutral. And I get in trouble for saying that sometimes, but when I say circumstances are neutral, I do not mean that they're easy or painless.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're very difficult and painful.
Yeah.
But I was able to develop through that experience a model that starts with this: it is what it is. Okay, also annoying depending on who's saying it. But all it means is that it could always be better.
Mhm.
And that's true the other direction too, right? It could always be
Worse.
worse. So, my job, as I've come to understand it since then, is to illuminate the obvious. And this is really cool. I get paid to tell people things I already know. But there are so many obvious things that are completely unnoticed until they're called to your attention.
Mhm.
Like the feeling of your shirt. Can you feel it?
When I
Well,
notice it.
now,
Yeah.
now that I've mentioned it,
Yep.
right? But it's unnoticed until it's called to your attention.
Mm.
Or the fact that we're speaking English. Did you notice? Again,
Now I know.
obvious. And now you notice it. And the processes in our brain are in that space. They're obvious once they're called to your attention.
Mhm.
So check this out. It is what it is, right? And for me, it was the bankruptcy, but it could be anything. My son called me 2 years ago, my oldest son, raising 5 of my grandkids in Chicago. Dad, I have cancer.
Mhm.
It is what it is. Right now, if I fast forward and skip all the details and tell you his last set of scans showed no evidence of disease.
Huh.
Okay, now notice how you're feeling about what I just shared with you. So,
Yeah.
my job is to call to your attention what your brain is doing. What you do with it after that is totally up to you. I'm not here to tell you how to think, I don't have that kind of authority. But I want you to see that you are. And the first thing that we do with what it is, no matter what it is, the first thing that we do is we evaluate it. And I invite you to just notice that you're constantly judging, evaluating, right?
Yeah.
You see it? And as I call it to your attention, notice that you're constantly judging yourself, your business, your finances, your spouse, your kids, your ex. You judge the government, the economy, the weather. You're judging me. It's cool. I'm judging you. It's my point is you can't turn it off. See, your brain's main job is to keep you safe and to prove you right. And both of those get in our way all the time. But to keep us safe, your brain has to constantly be judging. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this dangerous? Is this safe? That's evaluation.
If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now.
Now, the next thing I would invite you to notice is that evaluation implies comparison with some standard. Like if I were to ask, how you doing financially? How are your investments performing? You'd have to ask another question. Compared to what?
Yeah.
Right? Compared to where they were yesterday? Compared to where they were in 2008? Compared to what? How you doing? So notice that. And in the model, and Chris, we're not going to get into the whole model today. I'm just giving you an introduction to how to operate the equipment. But I've summarized this entire model in a little mini book called Portable Positivity. I think you've got a copy of that.
Yeah.
And I've got a free digital copy of that mini book for anybody listening to the show. So just go to drpauljenkins.com/money ripples. Okay, we're going to make this easy. Just remember my name, drpauljenkins.com/money ripples. And I'll give you a free digital download of that mini book because it walks you through the whole process. But the quick version, so notice that you're constantly judging. That creates energy. So check it out. When you take what it is, whatever it is, and you compare it to something better, well, how do you feel about what you got now?
Usually
Compared
you
to
feel worse.
something better, this sucks. So my son calls me and says, Dad, I have cancer. And compared to not having cancer, that sucks. And that's what I was doing. I was comparing it to, not having cancer. When I went through my bankruptcy, what was I comparing it to?
Not being bankrupt.
Not being bankrupt, positive cash flow, residual income, right? I'd read the books, I'd attended the seminars, and I was comparing it to what I was imagining I could be doing, and it wasn't that. And I felt badly about that. This is the quick route to depression. All right? When we compare what it is, our life, our relationships, whatever it is, to something better, we're going to feel worse. Now, this is obvious. I'm inviting you to notice it.
Yeah. This is like social media every day for people, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, we've got a culture of comparison.
Yeah.
But also, like I said, your brain has to evaluate. That's it. It's doing its job. And if you don't have a standard of comparison, which social media is happy to provide, by the way, then you'll make one up. And you've got a really good imagination, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I shared with you that my son's last set of scans showed no evidence of disease. And then how did you feel?
Relief.
How did I feel? How did he feel? Relief. Yes, because guess what? We can imagine something a whole lot worse
Hmm.
because that's not how every cancer story ends.
But how would you imagine
And
something worse than bankruptcy, Paul?
oh, you know what? While I was going through that, Chris, my wife and I had an opportunity to lead a group of young people on a pioneer reenactment trek. And I have pioneer ancestors. Some of my early ancestors came across the plains drawing hand carts. And if you do a little Google search on the Martin Handcart Company, um, this is a group that my ancestors chose to migrate with. And like half of them died in an early winter onset in the plains, high plains of Wyoming before they reached the Mountain West where they settled. And I'm thinking about my ancestors and I'm like, I'm going through a bankruptcy. This is so hard. And I'm like, hard? Really? Compared to what?
They were
Because
eating leather.
I knew where my kids were sleeping.
Yeah,
I knew what I was going to feed them the next day. I wasn't burying someone before we took off that morning.
right.
And compared to that, no, I'm good. I'll take the bankruptcy. Thank you. This is good compared to that.
Yeah.
Now, this is important, Chris, because our brain is driving everything. And the next part of the model that you'll see in that mini book, I break it down for you. The next part of the model is creation. And I mean creation of what is to be. That doesn't exist yet.
Mhm.
We haven't created it yet. So the only place it exists currently is in our imagination.
Yeah.
It's in our mind. Now check it out. Just focus on the energy for a minute. When you imagine that what's coming is even worse than what you already have, how do you feel?
Worse.
Okay, obvious, but unnoticed until I call it to your attention. This is the definition. Now, remember, I'm a professional psychologist. This is the definition of anxiety. And it's almost pandemic in our society right now.
Mm.
Anxiety is when we imagine, because we don't know. I mean, go there for a minute. How you doing next week?
Obviously, I'm going to be worse.
You you don't know,
Yeah.
but you've got predictions
Yeah.
and expectations and projections, don't you? I mean, you think about your business, your finances, your relationships. How are we doing next week? You
We
don't
don't know.
know.
Yeah.
So, as you imagine or predict or expect, it generates an emotional impact. And when we expect that what's coming is worse, we experience anxiety. Now,
Mm.
how do you feel when you imagine or predict or expect that what's coming is even better than what you've already got? How do you feel?
Obviously better.
And I label this one hope. Hope is the number one preventative factor for suicide.
Mm.
And I just shared with you how you can choose it. But until you see it as a choice, it's not.
Mm.
Awareness precedes choice. And what you think matters. Now, you've known that forever too. But what I'm sharing with you through this model is that what you think as you judge your current what it is matters,
Mm.
because that sets you up to go create what is to be. And energetically, we get to choose our position. Position is synonymous with attitude. My son, who's a pilot, taught me that because I didn't even know before that it was an aviation term. But the attitude of an airplane is its position relative to the ground or the horizon. And you can see that a nose down attitude is going to head you into the hard stuff.
Mhm.
Nose up can give you altitude if you've got the right thrust and lift. But it starts with that. And it was so cool because I was up flying with him one day. My son's, my life is literally in his hands as he's flying me around in this little 2-seat sport cruiser. And he said, yeah, if you're ever in trouble up here, check your attitude first. And I thought, I love that. I'm a psychologist. You can see how that would relate. I've kind of run through that fairly quickly, Chris, but
Yeah.
this is so key. And like I said earlier, I am not here to tell you how to think. I invite you to see that you are thinking. This affects everything, everything you do, from finances to relationships to health. It matters.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do with it is up to you, but awareness precedes choice. So putting this tool into people's hands is what I am so passionate about right now.
Yeah. I know we can go down this rabbit hole a long time because I know this would apply to your children, especially I know the rising generation struggles so much with, they call it anxiety, even if they're just a
Yes.
little nervous, they think it's anxiety, right? And I mean, it's affecting everybody's happiness, isn't it?
Yes, and it is anxiety,
Mhm.
but most people don't understand where it's coming from. They think that it's about their circumstances.
Mhm.
There is overwhelming evidence that that is not the case because we see people in exactly the same circumstances, either thriving or failing.
Mhm.
And that's true. That's true in the financial markets.
Yeah.
You and I both know people who thrive regardless of market conditions.
Mhm.
Well, it's not magic. It's not luck. It's principle.
It's metacognition.
Yes, and it starts with learning how to operate the equipment of your own mind.
Yeah.
Once you know how to do that, then you go steer it wherever you want to.
Yeah.
Awareness precedes choice.
It's a great point. I think that's where I see a lot with our clients too within Money Ripples is that sometimes they'll look at their situation and they'll get stressed or worried about an investment or about this or that.
Yeah,
But again, I have the perspective of, years, maybe more years than they've had investing. I'm like,
right.
oh, it could be way worse than this. This is actually not bad at all. In fact, you're probably going to come out just fine on the other end. But they're always worried about that worst case scenario, right? And they create all this anxiety. I have to like calm them down. It's like, listen, this is normal. There's nothing out of the normal here. This is something that happens
Uh,
even in successful investments. They're like, okay, I just need that perspective, right?
well, and the color in your beard, Chris, suggests that you've earned your opinions about this. And the predictions that we make, we don't even know. I mean, you threw out like, people are imagining the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
There is no such thing.
Yeah,
Unless we drop the
true.
T, the worst case scenario, it's worse than, there's always one of those, but
Oh
there's
yeah,
never a worst because
true.
no matter what you can imagine, it could always be worse than that.
Yeah,
And we get enough life experience, we get enough miles under us. Did you see what I did there, Chris?
yeah. There's a little pun there.
We get enough miles behind us, we start to learn that for sure. It could
Yeah,
always be worse. In fact, I've experienced worse.
yeah,
And that puts us in a position where we're always better off than that.
right.
And then energetically, we can move forward and create an upgrade. I'll get behind
Absolutely.
your upgrade all day long. And this is how it's done.
Yeah, I love it. Really, last quick question for you here before I let you
Okay.
go. What do you? We talk about the ripple effect that you create in people's lives, right, on the show
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
love that.
What do you feel is your ripple effect?
Thank you for asking that because what I'm noticing, especially at this phase in my career,
Hmm.
is that it's not about me. It's about empowering people with the tools to operate the equipment of their own mind and then watching as they as they move forward, and do that with their own children, with their teams, with the people that they can influence. And it's amazing what happens with that. Talk about a ripple effect. It's more of a tsunami effect.
Yeah. Especially when it's generational. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pathological positivity being just perpetuating forever, right?
Don't get me started on P alliterations. You know that I get crazy with that.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Paul, I appreciate you being on our show today. This has been awesome. Everybody, you can go to drpauljenkins.com/money ripples to get a digital copy of that book for free. Such a generous gift. So I appreciate you doing that, Dr. Paul. Well, everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in today. Remember, it's not just about what you learn, it's about what you do with it. You can't just be a hearer, but you have to be a doer of the word as well. Go and make it a wonderful and powerful and positive week. We'll talk to you later.